Hello and welcome to the Boot Room. Andy, Warren, Stuart Watson here to look ahead to Ipswich Town's FA Cup clash with Rotherham at Portman Road. Stu, a little break from the hurly-burly, the hustle and bustle of League One action and Town's bid to finally win promotion from the third tier for an FA Cup third round game. Haven't had one of these for a little while.
No, we haven't had one of these for 4 years, I think it is, or certainly since Ipswich dropped into League One. Haven't made it to the third round stage. We're going way back 13 years since, or 13 years since they won an FA Cup third round tie against Blackpool away from home. We all know the Ipswich Town and FA Cup grim stats that have followed since then. But Bracknell and Buxton, non-league sides, have been beaten quite comfortably to get to this stage. So I think this is a nice little fixture for Ipswich off the back of a pretty hectic period, a couple of disappointing draws on the road. To be at home after going to Portsmouth and Lincoln, I think is a good one. And for this to be a winnable tie against a championship side that are struggling at the moment is hopefully a chance to for a bit of a confidence booster going into that huge game against Plymouth 7 days later.
Yep, that's obviously on the horizon, but we're coming off a period where we know that Town have been suffering with real illness in the camp. That's undoubtedly been a factor in the last few games, probably more than we all appreciated at the time. Maybe a chance for a few people with no midweek, well, I suppose game on Monday, no midweek game as such. Hopefully a few of that illness is out of the system now, Stu, and they can begin to get themselves right again.
Yeah, it's going to be a real selection poser for Kieran McKenna, because you could think we've got this big game against Plymouth coming up. Why take any risks? The league is priority 1, 2 and 3 for Ipswich and getting promoted this year. Illness, as you say, is kind of spread throughout the entirety of the squad. Kieran McKenna said that if he'd have picked fully fit players at Lincoln on Monday, he'd have had 3. So that tells you the extent of that. Then you throw into the mix that both Lee Evans and Marcus Harness have just rattled out 3 games over Christmas straight off the back of medium-term injury recoveries. But then you think if he changes the whole team and gives everyone a rest, then you might lose. Then a few of these little jitters that are just starting to emerge go up another notch, makes for a bit more of a nervy home crowd going into Plymouth. And then the players that come back in have gone at least 12 days without a start, and they might be a little bit rusty and lose some of that match sharpness as well. So there's a balancing act to be had, I think, with the team that Kieran McKenna picks for this one.
Let's have a little chat through that then, because we've become used to Ipswich managers making wholesale changes for cup games, 10, 11. Kieran McKenna's not quite been like that. He's very clear about where the priority is, and as you say, that is league. But he has made changes along the way. But he's also left key players in at certain times for the reasons that you've just stated there. So should we talk through this team and hammer out the wrong one probably by the end of it? But something approaching some common sense. What about the goalkeeper? Václav Hladký doesn't have many opportunities to play games of football, but that's not always meant to start in cup games for him.
I think it will be Walton. Walton started the last game against Buxton. I think Hladký started the previous one against Bracknell, but it was Walton v Buxton. And I think that will be a bit of a statement. I think he'll want senior players through the core, the spine of this side, and that starts with the goalkeeper. So that's my guess on that.
Let's keep going through the spine of the team then, Stu. Spinal player. Sam Morsey is a spinal player, the captain. Should he start this game?
He started the previous 2. I think he started against Buxton and Bracknell, didn't he? He would be, when you're looking at someone who's going to be the glue that pulls together maybe a bit of a mix and match side, then and I think playing your captain is a bit of a statement in these. He's the sort of guy that wants to play, will be putting his hand up to play in this one. So yeah, I've got him down in my starting lineup. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think so. A solid vertebrae in the spine. Yeah, I think a bit of a tone setter. I think if you play Sam Morsey, much like when he walked out and we knew he was on the team sheet for that game at Bracknell, that really felt like a tone setter to me, a standard setter. Do not let your standards drop, Ipswich Town. Your captain's here. lead from the front and get that done. Defense is an interesting one. We'll kind of move away from the spine maybe here, because Luke Wolfenden and Cameron Burgess have become the heart of that defence, haven't they? But we know full well, illness and injury permitting, there's two players, Richard Keogh and George Edmondson, who are both solid performers at League One level, who will want to play games. I think they'll probably will break up the Wolfenden-Burgess partnership. Do you?
I think so. Centre half's probably the area of the team that I found hardest to predict, actually, when writing these down. Edmondson couldn't travel to Lincoln. He was one of the worst hit for the illness, and hasn't played a huge amount of football of late. It's a toss-up here, and this will apply to a few other players that we discuss in a moment. Do you use this game to get them up to speed and get some minutes in their leg just in case you need them in the weeks to come, or do you go with the people that have been rattling out the games? I think it will be half and half, one of the usual starters and then one of either Keogh or Edmondson to come in. The two I've got written down is Burgess and Keogh, but it could be any combination of those four, in all honesty.
I've got Edmondson and Burgess. We'll see. It will be something like that. Then you got fullbacks. Janoy Danassian had to go off ill at Lincoln. That maybe shows the extent of that. And then Leif Davis was another who couldn't be at Lincoln because of illness. So I think that's going to be a factor in this. And then this is the big debate that you kind of outlined about how long do you leave players not playing a game? Leif Davis would then go back to the Portsmouth game without any action.
I think had Davis played on Monday, this would have been nailed on for a Greg Lee game, just back from injury himself and still sort of finding his feet again. But the fact Davis didn't play on Monday, I don't think you'll want one of your key players going too long without a match. Hopefully he'll have recovered from his illness this week, and I think they'll want him. I imagine him and Lee will probably spread out some minutes in this game. Davis to start and Lee to get a decent chunk off the bench. That would be my thoughts.
Yeah, I think down the 60-30 route. I think for this one, McKenna's shown in the past, hasn't he, that they're quite happy to set out for certain games, cup games mainly, with a sort of an action plan that they want to stick to in terms of minutes. I think this will be one of them in a number of positions. I think we would both probably say Janoy Danassian at right back if fit or well. But midfield is one where I think McKenna might ration some minutes. If we're saying Morsey, we now also have Lee Evans, who I think we could probably agree will drop out of this side. Then, is it Cameron Humphreys or is it a second debut for Massimo Luongo? This is where I think some minutes will be rationed.
Possibly, yeah, because until Luongo signed this week, you'd say definitely a Humphreys game to come in. Has certainly passed his sink or swim test, coming in and playing quite a number of games in the absence of Lee Evans leading up to Christmas. Is now sort of back on the bench with the Morsey Evans partnership resumed, and he's been waiting for a cup game to come along to play. Obviously scored off the bench on Monday, but this is an ideal game to get Massimo Luongo some minutes as well. He's not started a competitive game all season. He's had a couple of weeks training with Ipswich. You need to get him up to speed. If you're going to have to, you've signed him for a reason because you think you're going to need him over the next 6 months. You're not going to want him to suddenly be, if Sam Morsey gets a suspension in the next few weeks, you don't want to suddenly parachute Massimo Luongo into the team with no competitive football under his belt. So for that reason, I've got him going straight into the starting lineup.
Interesting. I've gone down a different route with mine. I'm thinking the 55-35 split. Humphreys from the start, Luongo comes on, but then Humphreys moves into a more advanced role to finish the game, to freshen things up, potentially in the attacking three. We'll come back to the attacking three in a second. We'll quickly talk about Freddie Ladapo. I think we're both in agreement. This is a game for Freddie Ladapo as the leading man.
Yeah, he didn't start the last game. Obviously, he missed a bit of a gilt-edged chance when he came off the bench at Lincoln. He is not going to be short of motivation right now, is he? He's got a lot of talk about Ipswich needing to upgrade his position this January. Plenty of striker names flying around. George Hurst, Nathan Broadhead at the head of that. He tends to start 2-3 games maximum and then gets rotated out. And the next two opponents now happen to be against two of his former clubs, Rotherham and Plymouth. So this is a real opportunity for him to in these next couple of games to remind everybody. And I think it's important that he does do well in these games, because I do have this slight fear that Ipswich fans in general are going to put a lot of expectation on the weight of a striker coming in to hit the ground running and be the talisman and do everything from the start. So if Ladapo can have a good couple of games, if this kind of fires him up and brings the best out in him, then that can only be a good thing.
Yep, I hope to see that. And then this is a chat we have before every game. The three behind the striker. For me, Connor Chaplin is a nailed-on starter there, having not done at Lincoln and looked so bright after coming on. And I want to see him in the same attacking unit as Shawnee Aluko. I think those two have got a way of working together that I like. Aluko I thought was very good at Lincoln. So I'd like to see those two at least as two of a three.
Yeah, and I've got Caden Jackson on the right side to give Wes Burns a bit of a rest. I think he's one that's had a bit of the illness over Christmas. Maybe just dip him out. I've gone slightly different. I've gone Chaplin and I've got Humphreys in. That's how I've got Humphreys and Luongo into this team. I've put Humphreys in that number 10 role. It's where he came on and scored against Lincoln at the weekend. Luco was fantastic to watch, wasn't he, at Lincoln? His first touch, his silky skills. I think he nutmegged someone about 4 or 5 times in that first half alone, dancing along the byline. So as much as I enjoy watching him, we have to remember that he's had some injury problems this season. As he's 33 years of age now, and I think he might be one that's kind of used off the bench. But again, it could be any combination of some of these players that we're talking about. I mean, there's other options. We've left out Kyle Edwards here. We've left out Ghassan Hadmi, players that you would deem to be more fringy sort of players. But I think McKenna will just tip slightly towards more of a proper first team in order to try and make his team as competitive as possible and get a morale boosting result and make sure that they go into the Plymouth game feeling nice and sharp.
We shall see. As always, we'll find out at 2 p.m. on Saturday. The team, Rotherham, Stu, have had Ipswich Town's number in League One, haven't they? Often at arm's length. Some quite physical arm's length at times. Similar group of players still at Rotherham now, but some key ones missing that we were used to seeing that are no longer there.
Yeah, you've still got people like Barlaser and Obene and players that will be very familiar to Ipswich fans from their League One duels in recent years. But crucially, the manager's different. I think without Paul Warne, immediately Rotherham are a different type of side. Matt Taylor played a different brand of football at Exeter, is probably still in the process of changing some of the philosophies there. And it's very difficult to change those philosophies in the middle of a championship relegation battle. And they are in that now. They've lost 8 of their last 12 games. They're now a point above the relegation zone. All does not seem too well there amongst the Millers. If you look at their comments from their fan base and journalists that surround them, I think they're fully expecting the yo-yoing of that club between tiers 2 and 3 to continue. So how they approach this game is going to be very interesting. Do they look at this as a chance as a confidence booster and to try and stop the rot? Or do they almost take, as we often saw with Ipswich in the Championship, 10, 11 changes, bit of an unwanted distraction, and not take it too seriously on Saturday? So we'll see on that score.
Yes, could potentially be a clash of ideas and styles in this game. We'll finish off with some predictions, but first we shall pause to look at some of the key stats heading into this game. Okay, let's finish with some predictions, Stu. Round 3 of the FA Cup, first time in a very, very long time. Is there going to be a win for a first time in even longer?
Very difficult game to predict because we don't know which what either manager is going to do with their starting lineup, but I'm hoping that Ipswich are going to feel sort of refreshed and renewed after a few days on from Christmas, that they're going to be up for this because they're going to want to set the tone going into Plymouth. I'm not sure it will be a classic in terms of a game, but I've got Ipswich to edge it 1-0.
My gut feeling, and I think this is probably years of cynicism, Stu, edges towards the replay option. And shake your head all you want. Shake your head all you want, mate. It doesn't mean it's not going to happen. I think it might happen. I think this game might end in an unwanted 1-1 draw, which would mean a trip to New York Stadium after that Plymouth game and before Oxford, I believe. Yeah. But yeah, I'm going to say 1-1, which neither team will be happy with, I'd imagine.
Oh, that's something to look forward to, isn't it? The draws on Monday before the Monday evening game, Arsenal v Oxford, I think, on ITV. So if Ipswich are still in the hat, that's something to look out for. And for those feeling optimistic, the 4th round takes place at the end of January, when Ipswich are scheduled to face Accrington at home. So that would have to be a rearranged game. But yeah, we shall see what happens tomorrow. Follow the coverage with us as always.